Well, Richard Lane is familiar to Catholic TV viewers from his previous appearances and Blink segments. Richard, thanks so much for being with us all the way from a place we love because we're there, Detroit. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's great to be back with you two, gentlemen. God bless you both.
God bless you. First of all, happy belated birthday. You just had a birthday, didn't you?
Yes, I did. The Lord blessed me to be a big old grand double nickels, 55 years old, and I'm just very thankful.
That's, as people who are older than that, we like to say that's young. So you're a young man. Well, hey.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So today, racism, the issues we face as a society and a church have just been devastating, but it allows conversation too. You've been at the forefront of this topic. Tell us what you recommend for parishes.
One thing that I recommend is we've got to have a conversation. We have to make time for the conversation. Number two, we have to prepare ourselves to be uncomfortable. If I were to tell you the actual truth of my experience, the fact that I have been called the N-word, and I've been called the N-word in a Catholic church as recently as a couple of weeks ago. I've been called the N-word in the Catholic church within the last 3 years. If I were to say that word, it would make you very uncomfortable. But the reality is these are the realities that millions of people have to live with each and every day. Racism is like a series of small cuts. It just hits you. It cuts and cuts and cuts, and it grows and festers into a larger wound. And unfortunately, we're seeing the results of all of these millions and millions of cuts over several centuries. And we have to be prepared to have the conversation. We have to be prepared to be uncomfortable. I've always said Jesus came to afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted. Let me say that again for the Dallas Cowboy fans who are a little slow. Jesus came to afflict the comfortable and to comfort the afflicted. And we all have to be prepared to comfort those that are afflicted. The Bible in 1 John says, if anyone has material possessions and sees a brother or sister in need, but has no pity on them, how can the love of God be in that person? Let us not love with just words or speech, but with actions and truth. And it's time that we are a church of actions and truth. Prayers and thoughts and prayers are good, but we need to have actions, and we need to have this uncomfortable conversation.
And you know, that conversation is beginning right here, perhaps for a lot of our viewers. Yeah. We really appreciate you helping us to do that. And that's an amazing comparison, a series of small cuts, and that's the effects of racism. Thank you for sharing that. And, you know, I think that, I know that we need the gifts and talents of Catholics to help Black Catholics who've experienced spiritual trauma in the church to begin to find healing. How do we do that, Richard? How can you help us with that?
It's with the encounter, Your Excellency. The main thing that I've been preaching parish missions all over the world now for over 15 years. And one of the things that I've found, Your Excellency, is that most Catholics have never had an encounter with Jesus that has changed their lives forever. They've never had that encounter with the Eucharist. Because if we have that true encounter with the Eucharist, Your Excellency, then we will become what we receive. We will become that Eucharist. We will understand that the Mass begins when we walk outside of those doors and we begin to live the Mass. So one of the things that we have to do is, again, have the conversation, be prepared to be uncomfortable, but we have to have that encounter, that uncomfortable encounter. Jesus made the woman of Samaria uncomfortable. But when she understood the gift that was right in front of her, she ran back and shared that gift with her family, with her community. The same thing, Your Excellency, when we have an opportunity to have that conversation, that uncomfortable conversation, and we begin to see others' lives through the paradigm of their experiences, then we too can have that encounter with the gift that converts us all, the gift that encounters us, so that we too, Your Excellency, can go back and share that love and those gifts in our communities.
Richard, I'm going to ask a question that seems basic and easy, but might be the most difficult one. Why is there racism?
That's an excellent question, Jay. And to be honest with you, it goes all the way back to Genesis. Genesis chapter 9, verse 27. And it's where Noah said that he was going to make Shem the slave over Ham. And that's where racism began, in separation, and in separation of peoples, in separation of color. And that's where the entire DNA spawned from. And unfortunately, it is continued throughout our ancestry, throughout our generations. And even those that used slavery against us, they justified it using that particular Bible verse, Genesis 9, chapter 9, verse 27. And again, we have to get out of that way of thinking. But that's an excellent question, because if we don't know where we have come from, then we will be destined to repeat our past.
Richard, you get all around the country, all around the world, really, in your ministry. Has the health crisis kind of kept you more at home and slowed you down a bit?
Yes, it is. It really has. And there are so many people like me that suffer from clinical depression and PTSD. And I'm never afraid or ashamed to say that, because millions suffer with depression. And unfortunately, this pandemic that we are going through has been a petri dish for those of us that suffer from depression. And I continue to keep in prayer. And I listened to the Lord, and the Lord said, well, look, this is a time for you to not only stay at home, but this is a time for you to change the way you do ministry. And so I listened to the Lord, and now, Your Excellency, I've started a podcast called In Your Lane Podcast that is now on Spotify, SoundCloud, and Apple Music. I'm doing preaching. I'm preaching online. I'm doing Bible studies online. And so I'm just trying to continue to keep myself busy and continue to be an example for those that are like me, that suffer from depression, that we can continue to fight through it. And that's one thing I've always said. I want people to come out of this pandemic learning something new. Whether you can come out of this pandemic saying, I've read the Bible, I've studied the Bible, I've learned a new language, I've started a new business. Something positive that you can come out of this pandemic with that's going to effectuate change in the world.
Well, Richard, it has been a pleasure having you. It's been so much of a pleasure that we're going to have you back on Tuesday's show, if that's okay.
Only if you get a haircut.
Unfortunately, I don't think that will be the case by then. But, Richard, we'll see you on Tuesday. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you both. God bless
Thank
you both.
you.
God bless you, too.